How's it going? So super quick one. When you are,
And then there was no power supply for monitor.
what I'm trying to prove in here is that, look, if you have a component which is inside of, let's just make so this is a wrapper which is useContext, right? And it wraps a component which sits in here. Now, let's say this wrapper has value, which is just going to be an object, and inside the object we're going to have anything. Let's say name equals to 1. It doesn't matter. Okay. Now, when this component here changes this object through dot notation, it will not re-render. Why? Because again, all the React rules apply to useContext even when you use dot notation. Because if you're mutating object using dot notation, it's not useState, so re-rendering does not happen. Right, so I'll show you this in example. So that's our context. We have the provider, we have the component inside, and inside of this component we are changing the value. So you see we are getting the context value through here, we are console logging it, and then we are adding just completely brand new value into the object, which is through dot notation, right? And then we can see that value in here. So watch, right? So we're gonna reload. You will see that before we don't have the value, after we have that value. Okay. So the next question is then, will other components inside the context be able to see that value? And the answer to that is yes, they can. And let me show that to you. One second. Well, look, okay. So we have changed the value right in here. So we can see it in here. So now we're going to add a second component. And then we're going to console log it. So let's go with B. Let me just remove all of this. And then we're going to let me just remove this real quick. Okay, so this is second component that sits inside the context. We just need to add it. I think I already added this.
I can never tell if they're for pets or for children.
Okay, so we add it in here.
Yeah, I've seen both in them, so I'm like.
So now you will be able to see it. Okay, so look.
A bike with a canoe attached to it. It's like a big cargo bike thing, isn't it?
So look, you see? Yeah. So this is component 1. The value has changed. Now we're looking at component 2. Well, let me just type component 2. Comp. Let's just call it component B. Okay, let's just call it component B. There you go. So now we can see that component B can now see the value with the change. Now there is one very, very important caveat in here, is that for this change to be visible, the component must be after the first component that changed the value. Okay, so let me show you. So this component will not see it, but this component will, even though they are the same component. Look, you see? So let's reload. You see B, which uses the context value, does not see the added. This value here. You see, it just does not see it. Now, then our first component basically changes the value inside of it using dot notation, and then component B, which has mounted after the first component, which is in here, now is able to see it. So positioning of the component when you do something like this matters. On the first mount, again, it's very, very important to understand that this only applies on the first mount, right? So now the question is, will this component see this value at all? Because on the first mount it can't see it, but generally does it see it? And the answer is yes, it does. Because I will prove it to you by using the use effect. Okay, so let's just write use effect.
Take an interruption again, Gordon.
Use effect, there you go. So now we're going to monitor component B, well, the value that's coming from context, right? Because this is context value. All right, so now we're going to console log, and we call it after the change. I probably should improve the labeling because it's very confusing when you explain it. But okay, so let's call this component 1. So let's call this component 1. Okay. So this is going to be component 1, and that's going to be component 1. Okay. Otherwise, we're just going to get confused basically over this. Component 1, okay? Now this is going to be component 2. This is going to be component 2. Component 2. Okay? So now we have one component. So the question is, okay, what happens is this one mounts, and let's remove it from here. Let's remove it from here. So how does the change happens? Component 1 mounts first, component 2 mounts after it. Component 1 then changes the value, and then component B is able to see it on the first mount, right? So realistically, we should put component 2 before component 1. Because on the first mount, this component will not see the change that was done by this component. But because the context value has changed and we have put use effect to monitor the change, right? When that change happens, this component will not be, he will be able to see it. Okay, so it's important to remember that on the first mount, component 2 does not see the change, assuming that it's the first one, in the positioning is first, right? But after the change, because we're using use effect, it will see it, okay? So let me show you that in action. It's extremely confusing, I know that. What can you do? So you see component 2 does not see it. Component 1 mounts, then it does not, then it makes the change, and then because we put the use effect, because it listens to the change has happened, and now it can see the value. Okay? So the next question then is, what will UI see? Because here the component can see it because of the listener. But then what's going to happen if we just put the JSON into it, right? Let's just stringify. So what's going to happen is, in my opinion, it's not going to see the change. It's not going to see it. That's my opinion. So let's just have a look. Yeah, you see. Yeah, so this change only is visible because use effect is triggering because of the listener, right? But the component itself does not see it, right? So that means this is basically it's a shitty way of doing it. You have to have a use state that will re-render the parent, and then you'll be able to see it. So bottom line, you should not be changing context value by using dot notation. All right, take care, bye bye.